Well, welcome to the 700 Club, and thanks so much for joining with us. Well, many predict a recession is imminent, and some say it's already underway. That's now the consensus among economists.
Well, one big reason is the Federal Reserve sharply raising interest rates to bring down an overstimulated economy, and it's pushing the country into a recession. Caitlin Burke explains.
One key factor in all of this is the money supply. In 2020, fear over a pandemic shutdown prompted the Federal Reserve to begin pumping more than $6 trillion into the U.S. economy to combat unemployment and promote economic growth. Congress injected close to another $6 trillion in stimulus-related spending. The result? An overstimulated economy.
The reason we have such high inflation now is that the money supply was growing so fast in 2020 and 2021. That's still in the system. That's still driving things.
Steve Hanke served on President Reagan's Council of Economic Advisors and is now a professor of applied economics at Johns Hopkins University. He says the Federal Reserve got this one wrong.
They're overdoing things, you see. They created this huge growth in the money supply in 2020 and 2021. That, with a lag of 12 to 24 months, gave us a lot of inflation. That's still in the system. And now they hit the panic button early last year, and they're overdoing it. They're squeezing the money supply too rapidly, and it's actually contracting in an unprecedented way.
As the Fed rapidly raises interest rates, many businesses are hurting, and much less money is going into the economy. Hanke says it's now just a matter of watching the recession play out.
The money supply starts changing, in this case, actually going negative on us. With a lag of about 1 to 9 months, asset prices react. They go down. That's why the stock market's been kind of stagnant. Nothing going on in the stock market. Then, with a lag of about 6 to 18 months, the economy reacts. Real economic activity starts changing, and that's the recession. That is a recession.
Hanke anticipates recession to begin around the end of this year and predicts inflation will continue throughout it. In the meantime, he's largely ignoring economic headlines like job reports, the dollar status, stock market, and unemployment numbers, and simply watching the money supply.
Money dominates. That's the signal. The rest of the data are important. They're not irrelevant, but they can be. And they usually are noise because people really can't package them into any meaningful model that leads to an accurate prediction.
While Hanke can't predict the length of a recession, he believes it will be significantly worse if the Fed keeps raising interest rates. He recommends a pivot that would allow smaller economic growth rather than continuing to seek contraction. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Well, the Fed has already indicated they're going to continue to seek contraction. They're trying to get wage inflation under control. And until they start seeing changes in the labor market, they're not going to let up on raising interest rates. Now, what does this mean for you and me? It means that we're going to be paying higher interest on credit cards. We're going to be paying higher interest on home mortgages. So whatever you can do to get out of credit card debt, please do. Those rates are going to go up, and they're going to go up significantly because of what the Federal Reserve is doing. So as a consumer, rein it back in. The problem with that advice is when we rein it back in, the recession starts to get worse. So for those looking at retirement funds, those have been stagnant. They took a big drop last year. Will they take another drop this year? I don't know. But I do know there are some safe havens. Like, I've never recommended money markets to people, but at least you're going to get 4% on your money, and you're not going to be taking any kind of risk for further stock market declines. Some are, advising to go into some kind of hard assets, those kinds of things. I view that as speculation. So if you want to stay safe, keep your money in a money market. Here's, to get really geeky with this, here's a macroeconomic view. The total GDP, the gross domestic product of the United States, is 23 million. During the pandemic, the Federal Reserve pumped another $6 trillion into that market, and then Congress came along and had another $6 trillion in stimulus packages. So you added half the gross domestic product of the United States into an economy to keep it floating while we're in the middle of a pandemic, and that caused this inflationary spiral. You can look at supply chain, you can blame that, you can blame big energy, all of that as a political move. And when you add 12 trillion to an economy and there are no strings attached, watch out, there will be inflation. In other news, a surprising development in the ongoing controversy over classified documents. It looks like politicians want to take their homework home. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon. Former Vice President Mike Pence's announcement that his attorneys found classified documents at his home in Indiana is cause for concern on Capitol Hill. On top of the scandal surrounding President Biden and former President Trump, some in Congress are wondering if other members of past administrations are also harboring secret material. CBN's Jenna Browder has more.
The discovery of classified documents at former Vice President Pence's home has lawmakers questioning the executive branch's ability to protect the nation's secrets.
Kind of thought, holy heck. And I do wonder, how many other foreigners?
Obviously, there's a systemic problem in the executive branch. Clearly, there's a process involved here that's not working.
This after attorneys for Pence announced they turned over what they call a small number of documents with classified markings at Pence's Indiana home. Last fall, he told the media he didn't have any.
Let me ask you, as we sit here in your home office in Indiana, did you take any classified documents with you from the White House?
I did not.
Pence's lawyers insist he was not aware of these documents, adding that once they were found, he immediately secured them in a locked safe and contacted the National Archives. 3 days later, FBI agents arrived at his house to collect them. Pence reportedly launched the search proactively after classified documents were found at President Biden's Delaware home. That makes 2 presidents and 1 vice president who all had classified documents at their homes. Former President Trump brought hundreds of documents to Mar-a-Lago. And classified material was found at President Biden's Delaware home and former private office in Washington. Inside Elections' Nathan Gonzalez told CBN's Faith Nation there's a difference in the way the cases were handled.
In the case of Pence, the documents are found. Pence said, take them. And with Biden, his lawyers found them. They said, here, we're going to give these back. When they were found or thought to be, when Trump had them, the FBI had to come get them because he didn't hand them over.
Both Biden and Trump face special counsel investigations. The DOJ is still reviewing the Pence case. Those documents mostly came from his official residence at the Naval Observatory, where packing was handled by military aides. Other material reportedly came from a West Wing office drawer. As for former administrations, former Vice President Dick Cheney and former Presidents George W. Bush, Obama, and Clinton all say they properly handled classified materials. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thank you, Jenna. As the nation deals with a rash of mass shootings, a new report calls for more community intervention to prevent them. The Secret Service's National Threat Assessment Center studied 173 mass attacks between 2016 and 2020. Report released today finds nearly 2/3 of attackers showed behavior so troubling that it should have been addressed immediately. The vast majority, 96%, were men. More than half had a history of domestic violence and anger towards women. The report also recommended businesses consider plans to prevent workplace violence. Well, recent attacks on several power substations in the Carolinas are spurring state legislatures to action. A North Carolina proposal requires utilities to have 24-hour security at stations that provide power to local communities. In South Carolina, Duke Energy is asking lawmakers to impose harsher penalties for those convicted of damaging substations. One bill in the state Senate includes a maximum 25-year jail sentence if someone dies as a result of a power outage caused by an attack. Meanwhile, security analysts are calling for national action to strengthen and upgrade the power grid nationwide. As Chuck Holton shows us, while attacks are happening with greater frequency, they've happened before.
April 16, 2013, a Silicon Valley electrical substation came under rifle fire in a coordinated and well-planned attack, causing millions in damages and nearly taking out power to Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and Intel. In the 10 years since that attack, no culprit has been found. Was it terrorism or vandalism? We still don't know. Now, a new wave is targeting America's electrical grid. On December 3rd, 2 North Carolina substations were shot at, knocking out power to 40,000 homes and businesses. Then on Christmas Day, 4 substations were vandalized in Washington state.
All 3 happened in the middle of the night on Christmas Day, causing power outages. There's a good possibility they are related. We're going to be investigating to see if this was coordinated by a specific group of people.
While authorities search for suspects, what they really need are answers.
We are aware of other incidents that occurred in Oregon and southern Washington, as well as the incidents from North Carolina earlier in this winter time. We're going to see if any of this stuff is related to that.
There are almost 79,000 of these electrical power substations all across the United States, connecting nearly 500,000 miles of power lines in 3 big power grids. Now, when these things were built, there wasn't much thought given to security, so most of them look about like this one, a rusty old gate and a chain link fence, safeguarding millions of dollars worth of equipment just inside there, like those ultra high voltage transformers over there, which are all custom built. That means that if they get destroyed, it might take up to a year to replace them. And that's causing the authorities to start to see this as a real threat to our national security.
20 years ago, I was on a task force with Homeland Security as part of the Secretary's office, and we were looking at exactly what's happening today, and unfortunately, it's gotten worse since then.
The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has called on local power co-ops to conduct a security evaluation of all substations by the end of April, and will then make recommendations on how to better secure America's power supply. But it's a daunting task.
We've got a bunch of enemies now that hate this country, and some are internal. So it should cause us to go, hey, well, wait a minute now. We need to really look at hardening up our grids.
The 2013 attacks in California cost Pacific Gas and Electric more than $150 million for security upgrades. So fixing this problem won't be cheap.
The infrastructure law passed last year includes $15 billion to upgrade and strengthen the power grid. But some energy experts estimate it would cost as much as $5 trillion to modernize and upgrade protection of the country's electric system.
We definitely need to look at making some of our key facilities way more hardened than they are. But the real issue is, how do we create redundancy within the system to make sure that if one element fails, our whole grids are not going down?
Chuck Holton, CBN News.
Thank you, Chuck. And Gordon, as you well know, CBN News has reported on these vulnerabilities for years now.
And redundancy is the key, and that will allow the whole system, the whole grid, to recover from a specific attack against a specific installation. It's going to be very hard to harden them or protect them. We've already seen in North Carolina, all it took was a rifle shot. And when you start thinking about drone technology, these kinds of things, how do you protect against all of that? And how do you protect every single installation? So how do we make this more secure? Well, we provide redundancy, and that's the way forward.